At 1:17 a.m., my phone lit the motel ceiling like lightning, and a stranger told me he'd killed someone. He didn't whisper. He breathed hard like he was jogging in place, then said, "Detective Hale, it's done. I put him down." I sat up fast enough to make the headboard crack the wall. The motel smelled like bleach and someone else's cigarettes. The swamp cooler clanked a rhythm that made the room feel like it had a heartbeat. My service Glock slept in the drawer under a Bible. I didn't touch either. "Slow down," I said. "Who is this? Where are you?" "You don't know me," he said, "but you know him. You've been chasing his shadow since winter." "Name." I reached for a pen that wasn't there and wrote in my palm with a thumbnail. "Who?" "Carver," he said. "Evan Carver." I knew the name. Everyone on my floor knew the name. Tech CEO with a smile calibrated in a lab, money that made problems dissolve, and a case file the size of a cinder block because women around him fell off the map. The DA wanted a clean line. I kept finding dotted ones. "What did you do?" I asked. "I ended it," he said. Then, "I'm not sorry." "Where are you right now?" Silence. I could hear wind, a hollow rush, and somewhere in it the trill of clacking flags you hear near a car lot. He sniffed once. "Then you're going to find me anyway." A tone. The line went dead. I stared at my phone and saw something that made my skin go cold. The callback number. I knew it before my brain delivered the answer. Carver's phone. Caller ID. Carver. Evan. I had logged it a dozen times, circled it on my whiteboard, cursed it when it went dark for 2 months. The motel ice machine coughed. The neon vacancy sign outside clicked, buzzed, settled into a red hum. I called dispatch, then my partner, then the on-call DA. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. At 1:24, a patrol unit found a body under the Evans Avenue overpass, face down in gravel, blood purpling the runoff. At 1:29, CSU texted me a photo I didn't ask for. Carver in a dark coat, one hand crooked under him, like he was reaching for a thing he'd dropped. The caption was a formality. Victim, Evan J. Carver. Time approx 00:15:01:15. Found with cell. And the part that hooked and wouldn't let go. One outgoing call at 01:17 to Detective Asa Hale. If the dead call you to confess, who do you arrest when the only fingerprints belong to the victim?
I used to be a husband with a mortgage and a dog that hated thunder. When my wife, Naomi, finally gave up and walked her suitcase to the Uber at the curb, the dog watched her go and then lay under the table for 3 days like grief had a location. The house on Yates Street held the shape of us for a while, then let it go. I sold it in the spring and started sleeping at the Siesta Motor Lodge by the highway when a case got inside my clothes. I'm 35, 6 feet on paper, divorced in practice, detective by habit. I work homicide out of Denver PD's 7th, a square of desks that smells like stale coffee and nitrile gloves. They call me Hale the way cops call each other by names that can take a punch. My partner, Torres, is smarter than me and knows it. She carries 3 pens and a candy bar and the patience of a person who has seen every version of a liar. Carver came to us in winter like a storm that refuses to admit it's over. His company, Helios, made an app that sold you safety and attention in exchange for your day. He spun a language about optimization that made investors clap. Women around him, contractors, assistants, and ex, rolled through missing persons reports and came back with explanations typed by lawyers. A mother's hospice care, a semester abroad, a mutual breakup with a check attached. We found a burner phone in a storage unit that smelled like dust and citrus cleaner. We found a garage camera that looked away at 3 a.m. and then looked back at 3:18. We didn't find a body. I grew up in Fremont County, learned to drive on washboard roads, and learned to talk by watching where men put their hands. My father died lifting hay bales he'd been lifting all his life. Then the doctor told us about a weak place in his heart, as if the word weak applied to anything in him. My mother kept the house like a ledger and cried when the train whistled. I came to the city because I like the way noise makes it look like everything is moving forward. Naomi and I met when her car wouldn't start outside of Walgreens, and I jumped it, and she called me a good man and didn't laugh. We lasted 6 years. She said I fell in love with cases the way other men fell in love with women. When we lost the pregnancy at 12 weeks, she wanted to talk, and I wanted to run surveillance. The gulf didn't open. It had been there all along. We finally honored it. By spring, I had a rhythm. Coffee that tastes like burnt bread, a jog around City Park with geese hissing like bouncers, shower at the station when the motel's water ran copper, dry socks in my desk, and a notebook that held more ink than my head could. In that notebook, on page 49, Evan Carver lived in black letters like a tattoo. Under it, where does the money stop? Who cleans up? I drew a small box and wrote Helios Campus, Sloan's Lake. CFO, Ren Alcott. Then I underlined Ren twice without deciding to. Ren Alcott was the quiet inside Carver's hurricane. 40-ish, sharp, a math teacher's daughter from Montbello who learned to turn other people's risk into a salary. When we first spoke, she sat in a glass box at Helios that pretended not to be an aquarium, mug steaming in her hands. She called Evan Carver in a tone that didn't rise or fall. We want to help. No one wants violence in this city. She didn't blink when I said subpoena. She blinked when I asked her where she was between midnight and 2 a.m. the night Amelia Kerr, a contractor, vanished. Asleep. Alone. In my notebook, alibi thin. Eyes tired. Hands steady. The thing about obsession is it teaches you to hear tiny sounds. A different ringtone in a crowded room, the way a gate clicks when it's locked by someone who believes in gates. At the motel, the ice machine coughs at 10 after every hour. The swamp cooler knocks twice when it needs a new belt. That night, 1:17 a.m., my phone cut the hum in half and a dead man told me he'd been murdered by a stranger using his own mouthpiece. If I had been home, Naomi would have said, "Asa, please don't chase it right now." And I would have kissed her forehead and chased it anyway. At the Siesta Motor Lodge, all I did was roll my socks into my pocket and go. I tell myself I do this because the dead can't. The truth is, I do it because the moment right before you know is a drug, and I'm an honest addict. What makes a confession feel true when the physics of it says it can't be?
Torres met me under the overpass with a styrofoam cup and the kind of look she saves for when I show up breathing too fast. The air smelled like wet dust and oil. Patrol had cordoned the scene with tape that lifted and snapped in the wind. A light bar stuttered blue against the concrete, like a nightclub for ghosts. Carver lay face down in gravel he wouldn't have chosen to die on. CSU worked like people moving furniture in a small apartment. A young cop gagged quietly in the dark and thought no one heard. "Shot twice," Torres said, handing me coffee that tasted like it had been made by someone who hates coffee. "Close range, no casings. Either a revolver or someone cleaned." "Phone?" "In his coat," she said. "Unlocked. He was on a call at 1:17. She looked at me because she knew already. Dispatch had broadcast it. "Our guy used the victim's phone to confess to you. That's a first even for your collection." Caller said he put him down, and I've been chasing his shadow since winter. I squatted near the body without getting close enough to be a problem. Carver's hair was still perfect. Wealth looks expensive, even when it's dead. He wanted me to know this was the same story, or he wanted to stitch your winter to his summer, make you his audience. We did the work you do. Canvass the underpass for cameras. 1 fake, 2 vandalized. Talk to the man who sleeps near the fence. He heard pops like a nail gun. Track the phone's last pings. Tower by a tire yard with a string of plastic pennants that clacked in the wind. Flags I remembered hearing. I smelled creosote, old rubber, the sour river smell that crawls up from the Platte. The phone logs were clean, except for one thing. At 12:49 a.m., an incoming call from a blocked number. 20 seconds. Then nothing. Until me. Could be a lure, Torres said. Tell him to meet at the underpass, shoot him, use his phone like a microphone. Could be Carver set a trap and met the wrong trap, I said. We followed the phone, the way fishermen follow birds. The pings put Carver's device near Helios's campus around 11:40 p.m., then rolling west. CSU bagged the phone at the scene, and I felt a stupid urge to touch it, like touching it would make the voice come back. A tech said, "We'll mirror it in the lab," and I nodded like I hadn't just thought, "Talk to me," at a rectangle of glass. By dawn, the city tasted like metal and bad coffee. The sky over Sloan's Lake went from ink to bruise. We knocked on the glass box at Helios, and a sleepy guard let us in because he recognized Torres from a talk she gave about workplace safety. Wren met us in black clothes that didn't show anything. Her eyes were the only color. "Evan's dead," I said. I watched her face the way you watch a suspect's hands. There was something like grief, and something like a math equation she could solve if we'd stop talking. "Who?" she asked softly, and then caught herself. "I mean, who did it?" I said, "A man who called from Evan's phone. He called me." She didn't sit. She put both hands on the back of a chair like she might pick it up and throw it through the glass. "Why you?" It wasn't an accusation. It was an honest question about a pattern she hadn't seen. I told her about the winter, about women in dotted lines, about files that felt like snow you can't push with a shovel, just an endless white job. She listened like a metronome. When I finished, she said, "If you think I'm crying, I'm not. Sorry, I used it up 4 months ago." "What happened 4 months ago?" Torres asked. She picked up her mug and set it down again without drinking. She said, "I broke up with him, and I didn't disappear." If the first call is a riddle, every next step is an answer with teeth. So why did this one feel like it was smiling?
The DA wanted a name before lunch, because that's what DAs want, and because a tech billionaire on a slab makes everyone think about photographs they don't want to see on their feed. The chief wanted restraint. The mayor wanted a podium. I wanted coffee that didn't taste like a dare. We pulled traffic cams, doorbell footage, and a drunk's Instagram story that accidentally captured a dark sedan rolling toward the underpass at 12:58 a.m. The sedan's plate was a smudge. The song on his story was an old Springsteen track, harmonica like a siren. The lab mirrored Carver's phone and handed me a list of texts like a bucket of snakes. "Call me. You're overreacting. We need to talk. Where are you?" At 10:11 p.m., a message from Helios, CFO. "Don't. No punctuation. Plain. Scary." "Wren," I said into the phone, "why did you text 'don't' at 10:11? "I didn't. I was asleep. Phone on my nightstand." "Then someone used your phone." A breath. "Break-in? Or someone with your unlock?" "Like a boyfriend?" she said and laughed without humor. "No." We pulled her building's logs. No entries. No exits between 9 and midnight. We pulled Helios's internal card swipes. At 9:58 p.m., someone used E.V. Carver to enter Level 2, Finance. At 10:03, W. Alcott to the same. At 10:07, the same two swiped out. It could have been anyone with the cards, anyone with the hands. It could have been Wren. It could have been a ghost with good admin rights. Torres said, "Let's talk to your winter ghosts." We started with Amelia Kerr's mother, who smelled like lavender and old grief. Amelia's last text, he says come alone. Next, Priya Kaur, who didn't disappear but moved to Austin and changed her number, and told us on Zoom she still checks the back seat of her car. He didn't hit, he edited. He'd move your calendar invites, change your passwords, make you feel like you were losing things you hadn't lost. "Why?" I asked. "Because control's a love language for some men," she said, and looked at someone off camera the way you glance at a new boyfriend you're teaching to navigate old broken glass. Back at the underpass, CSU found a scrape on a pillar at bumper height, gray paint on concrete. The lab matched it to a Mazda 3 registered to Gideon Tully, a Helios security contractor whose personnel file said Valor Award Afghanistan, terminated, conduct unbecoming. We brought Tully in. He smelled like sweat and dryer sheets. He sat big and tried to make the room small. "Where were you at 1 a.m.? I asked. "Sleeping," which is what people say when they don't have a better lie. Your car kissed our pillar. Lots of Mazdas, lots of pillars. Carver ever stiff you? Guys like him are generous until they're not. Tully's jaw moved once, as if he were chewing a decision. Then he said, he forgot what people like me do for people like him. Which is, I asked, keep their mess off your desk. We held him for the car match and let him stew. He stewed like a man who believes stewing is beneath him. At 6:40 p.m., the lab pinged us, a partial on a casing in the weeds 50 yards from the scene. Not our scene yet. A kid's baseball earlier had kicked it out of hiding. 38 SPL, latent, unhelpful. The message included a photo of a blueprint near the weeds, Vibram, size 12, a small nick in the heel. Tully wore size 11s. His boots were clean. He smiled when we took molds. Tried goodwill, he said. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I drove past it and let the red vacancy hum pass from my left to my rear view and felt something like the memory of my house on Yates scrobe in my chest. I parked at Sloan Lake and watched the water go flat under a wind's hand. The air smelled like wet leaves and faint gasoline. A runner coughed as she passed, and the sound went straight into my head where worry lives. Who called kept echoing. The voice had been male, mid-30s, calm around the edges, adrenaline on top. He said he'd put him down. That's not how amateurs talk. That's how people who've done violence and categorized it. At 9:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown. I answered and heard breathing. Then a voice, not the same, a woman's this time, flinty as broken glass. You want your answer? Ask why Evan's voicemail pen is his daughter's birthday. Who is this? It doesn't matter. Just don't let them turn her into a motive. Her? But the line died and left me staring at my reflection in my screen like a bad omen. If the dead speak through their phones and the living speak through lies, which one do you play back at 2x to hear the truth?
The first twist wore a cardigan and held a coffee mug like a shield. Her name was Allison Carver, and I had seen her from across rooms, from photos printed in glossy magazines, from the far end of fundraisers where people buy tables so they can be close to money. She asked to meet at a cafe near Cherry Creek that smelled like roasted beans and rain drying on coats. She arrived alone, without a lawyer, with a face that looked less rich when it was tired. I didn't call you, she said, before I asked. Everyone thinks that's the only way I'd be here. Who did? She stared at her mug, then at me. Evan kept all his voicemail pins the same for years. He thought remembering was love. Your daughter's name? I asked, soft. June, she said, and something broke across her face like a small wave. He put her pictures in slides when he pitched men twice his age. They saw a father. They didn't see anything else. You're saying someone used his voicemail to set up a meet? She nodded. You know how some systems still let you call your own phone and enter a PIN and get to voicemail? If you spoof the number, it looks like a call from the phone itself. You can schedule callback rules. Evan had his phone set to redirect at night when he slept. He thought it made him more efficient. You think someone used that to place a call to me when he was already dead, I said. I think whomever killed him wanted to sing using his mouth. And you know the PIN because I was married to him for 12 years, she said, and looked at me like I should know what that makes a person complicit in. Who benefits from him dead? I asked. She laughed once, very small. Everyone who wanted to stop pretending, she said. Then she set the mug down with both hands and said, Please be careful with June. I'm not interested in making her the reason. But the twist wasn't the voicemail. It was the email. CSU pulled the draft folder from Carver's laptop, unsent, unsaved, hidden behind a dummy account. It was a contract. Executive severance Wren Alcott, with a clause that paid her 8 figures if she resigned upon material change in company leadership. It was countersigned W.A., dated 48 hours before his death. Golden parachute, Torres said. But why now? We brought Wren back into the glass box. She didn't deny the signature. She said, I made a deal. He wanted me out. I wanted a price. Why did he want you out? Because I told him ghosts have teeth? Because I said if one more woman went missing, I'd walk it to the press? And he killed you on paper? She shrugged, a hard little motion. Or he freed me. Where were you last night between midnight and 2? In bed, alone. She looked right at me. But I dreamed I was at Sloan's Lake. I dreamed I was watching a man drown in an inch of water. Why tell me that? Because I'm tired of trying to make my face make sense, she said. Torres scribbled a note and slid it to me. She's either clean or stone. I nodded because that's the kind of binary cops invent when we want a nap. If the first twist offers a door, which way is the hinge facing, and who's holding it open?
We spent the next 48 hours doing violence to coffee and sleep. The city did what cities do after a murder that might be a mirror. It talked. Comment sections bloomed. Reddit did its detective cosplay. An influencer posted a black and white photo of herself looking serious with a caption about safety. A man from college texted me for the first time in 8 years. Wild case, bro. You want it? We put Telly under and started counting his breaths. He rented a storage unit off Santa Fe that smelled like rubber and secrets. Inside, a cock, protein bars, a tool chest, a box labeled pay stubs, another labeled Helios S. The latter held nothing but a single key card with a Helios logo and a Sharpie note, Ren. Not typed, handwritten. My stomach tightened. Plant? Torres asked. Or trophy, I said. Either way, it says he's in the story. We found a burner phone in the unit's air vent. Clean. Factory reset last week. CSU treated it like a bomb. The lab found nothing but a smudge of oil that belonged to a brand of mechanics hand cleaner. Teller used kitchen soap. We checked his sink trap for grit. Clean. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed me out of a dream where Naomi stood in our kitchen and turned the light on and off like she could make time flicker. A text from Blocked. He deserved it. He put his monsters in other people's houses. A second. You keep returning to Ren. You should look at the river. I typed, name. You already have it. I tasted copper. The motel room swamp cooler clanked twice like a metronome for dread. I grabbed my keys. At the Platte, the air smelled like mud and iron. A jogger passed and nodded like I was just another man with insomnia. Under the Spear Bridge, someone had taped a bouquet to a pillar, the plastic crackling in the wind. I bent to read the card. Amelia, still looking. My throat closed in a way I hadn't asked it to. I stood too fast and the world swam. Detective Hale, a voice called. And I turned to see a man in a bright orange jacket waving like we were on a parade float. He jogged up, breath making little clouds. You're the guy on the news, right? With the eyes? Depends which channel, I said. He laughed. I walked this stretch. I've been seeing a gray Mazda parked weird across 3 nights. Same dent in the bumper. You looking for a Mazda? Always, I said. He pointed across the water to a lot by a tire yard strung with plastic pennants that clicked in the wind. The Mazda sat under a dead light, cold and guilty. We called it in. CSU found dried mud in the treads and a map tucked under the passenger seat with a circle around Evans Ave. Vibram print sat near the lot's edge, heel nicked. Telly wore 11s. The print said 12. The lab came back with a small present. Trace on Carver's coat that wasn't from the overpass. Granite dust, the kind used in headstones. The nearest monument yard was 6 blocks from Helios. Mile High Memorials we went. The air smelled like wet stone and cigarettes. A man with a mustache like a movie extra sold us an urn our budget didn't need and told us between prices that a woman had come by 2 nights ago asking about custom work. Kinda fancy. Looked like money that doesn't smile. He pointed with his cigarette ash when we asked for the tape. Blurry, sorry, cheap camera. The woman on the grainy footage could have been Ren, or Allison, or 100 women who shop where the lighting is kind. Helios payroll? Torres asked. Carver had a shadow ledger, the lab tech said later, tapping a spreadsheet we shouldn't have had. He paid cash to contractors who looked like wolves than sheep. Gideon Telly's name sat there, so did R. Lyle, C. Oates, J. Rourke, men with teeth. At the bottom, A. Hart. Allison? I said, no way. Different A. Hart, the lab tech said. Austin Hart. Private investigator with a license that's been rubber banding in and out of good standing, expelled from APD reserve program, likes money that comes in envelopes. Austin Hart lived in a one-bedroom that smelled like cat litter and entitlement. He opened the door in boxer shorts and a Broncos tee. He tried to stare me down. Torres showed badge. He smiled. Busted for fashion? We showed him the ledger. He shrugged. Consulting. On who? On whoever Evan paid me to look at. Mostly his own people. He trusted no one but his reflection. You call him last night? I asked. He scratched his belly. Nope. Phone died. We seized his phone. The call log said unknown at 1:49. He'd wiped the content badly. CSU unwiped enough to catch a fragment of audio. Wind, a flag clacking, and a man saying, "You owe me now," followed by a chuckle I recognized hours later when I was eating a burrito over my sink and watching an old Helios promo to punish myself. Carver's chuckle. He'd staged his own blackmail and then died under a bridge with his phone in his pocket and my name on his call history. Escalation is when all the people you shouldn't trust stand in a line and ask you to pick the one who hates you least. Which face do you choose when every face is a mirror?
I had a choice that wasn't a choice. Arrest Tully, who fit like a glove that doesn't warm you. Lean on Wren until she broke or didn't. Or walk into Helios and say the word sequester until a lawyer tried to fight me with paperwork. Torres said, pick the one that makes the others talk. I picked Allison. Not because I thought she'd pulled the trigger. She didn't carry that shape. But because the subpoena for her texts might break the voicemail trick open. And because when she said, please be careful with June, something in me that still knows how to be a husband heard it. I called a lawyer first because I'm not a monster. I asked for cooperation and got a lecture. Then I sent the paperwork that the judge signed because the judge keeps a mirror in her chambers with the note at the top. What if that were your daughter? At noon, Allison sat with her lawyer and interviewed two and poured water into a paper cup without spilling. We didn't set the voicemail, she said, but I knew it could be done. We fought about it last year when he missed June's school play because his phone had optimized his life. Who else knew the pen? I asked. His assistant? His CFO? Everyone who had to clean up after him. Rannigan. The line I didn't want kept getting darker. The choice hardened. Take her in and risk making a woman who didn't cry for Evan a villain the city would eat, or keep following the men who build storage units full of noise. I signed the warrant for Helios' server room. Sometimes the midpoint isn't a cliff dive. It's a door you open that smells like ozone and lawyers.
Helios Legal met us in the lobby with smiles that showed enamel and no teeth. We handed them the warrant and rode the elevator with the security chief, who used to be a cop and now wears watches that cost more than my car. The server room hummed like a beehive. The air smelled like cold metal and recirculated breath. A tech with a face that said he eats problems for breakfast handed over logs with the resigned grace of a man who understands that everything is an audit eventually. The log showed a call flow at 1:16 a.m., spoofed ingress, voicemail protocol, rule, redirect missed calls to preferred numbers, outbound, det a hail. The IP that pushed the rule, a Helios guest network login used at 11:52 p.m. in the lobby. The device, iPad, Alcott W. My stomach dropped. We pulled Wren from her glass box and set her in a gray room where the paint pretends to be calming. She stared at the logs. She didn't deny the device. My iPad lives in my bag, she said. Everyone borrows it in meetings. Evan used it Tuesday. He liked the pencil. Where were you at 11:52 p.m.? I asked. In bed, she said again. Detective, I'm telling you the truth. If I wanted him dead, I'd have done it on paper in a way that didn't make your life fun. Someone used your device to route a dead man's phone to me. That makes you the second-to-last voice in a farce. Wen's face did a thing then. Like a muscle she keeps hidden twitched. She leaned forward. 2 weeks ago, she said, the board told me Evan was pushing me out. I negotiated the parachute. I signed, because I wanted a number I could walk with and never look back. Yesterday morning, he threatened to revoke it. He said he'd prove cause. You know how men like him prove cause? They make you look crazy or complicit. I told him if he went to war, I'd bring names. He smiled. Names like Gideon Tully? I asked. Names like Austin Hart, she said. And Arlyle, who arranged flights with cash for guests Evan wanted invisible. We pulled Lyle. He cried. He cried like a man who discovered emotions when his retainer ran out. He gave us a list of drop sites and a contact, Rourke, a fixer with a jaw like a brick who used to work for a senator who forgot how airports work. Rourke bought gray Mazdas in cash and parked them where cameras blur. We grabbed Rourke at a gym where the air smelled like rubber and ambition. He sweated in the room and told us he didn't know any Carver. His phone told us he texted Hart a photo of the underpass an hour before the murder. His boots told us he wore a 12 with a nick in the heel. You went. You watched. He shrugged, as if we'd asked him if he preferred pecs or back day. It's a free country. The second twist slid under the door with the lab's report. Residue on Carver's coat that wasn't gunshot, wasn't gravel. Prussic acid, trace, hydrogen cyanide in faint amounts like someone brushed against a container that had seen it. The only place we'd been with that smell was the monument yard. Monument makers use cyanide compounds to clean certain stones. Mile-high memorials again. The mustache clerk looked less friendly at 8 p.m. under fluorescent lights that hummed like a headache. We asked for the back room. He said no. We showed a warrant. He gave us a key with a Broncos keychain and a sigh. In back, under a tarp that smelled like wet dog and metal, sat a crate with Carver stenciled on it. Inside, a blank granite slab, no name, no dates. A recent purchase. The invoice said Allison Carver. The credit card said Allison. A post-it in Sharpie. Delivery Tuesday. Pre-need, the clerk said defensively. People buy ahead. The slab wasn't the point. The shipping crate was. On the underside, a smear of gray paint that matched our pillar. On the inside, a residue that tested for cyanide. On the top, a sticker from Rourke Logistics, his side hustle. He'd moved the stone. He'd moved a lot of stones. Allison, Torres said, forehead lined. Or Evan staging a performance, I said. He loved optics. The unraveling pulled taut. A dead man with a phone that called me after he died. A fixer with boots at my scene. A CFO whose device rerouted a voicemail. A widow buying a blank stone with urgent delivery. If every piece fits two puzzles, how do you decide which picture it makes? And what do you do when both pictures look like your worst hunch?
Climax happens when the story stops offering you metaphors and asks for a room, 4 chairs, and a tape recorder. We put Wren, Allison, Rourke, and Hart in separate rooms and let the air go thin. Torres took Rourke because she can look at a man like a welding torch until the slag falls off. I took Wren and Allison because I'm good at listening to different versions of the same violin. Wren first. You routed the call, I said, placing the log in front of her like a clean knife. I didn't, she said, but yes, my iPad did something at 11:52. Check the lobby cameras. Who had my bag? We did. The lobby camera caught a man moving like he belonged everywhere. A man with a cap pulled low, broad shoulders, carrying a tote that could be anyone's. He sat, pulled out an iPad with a cracked corner like Wren's, tapped, stood. Under his jacket, a flash of orange, the same shade as the tire yard flags. Rourke. In his room, Torres set a photo of the lobby screen in front of him and said nothing. He broke faster than I expected, the way some men do when the math stops favoring them. He wanted a fall guy, he said. He wanted to make it look like you did it, detective. The call to your phone, that was the joke. He? Torres asked. Carver, he said. He told me to sit the rule. If I don't pick up by 1, make sure the cop gets his goodbye. His words. He thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. You killed him? I asked, later when I slid into the room. He looked at me the way a man looks at a priest he doesn't believe in. "No," he said, "I watched. I was supposed to watch and make sure the footage went the way he wanted." "Footage?" He nodded. "He wanted to die on camera," he said. "He wanted a martyr's cut." "Where's the camera?" "In the Mazda. Dash. He told me to park. He told me to make sure the pillar looked good behind him." "Who pulled the trigger?" He hesitated, jaw ticking. "The woman," he said, "the CFO." He wanted to hand me Wren like a gift. He wanted to open it and find a villain in a blazer. His eyes gave him away. He was telling a story to save his boots. I left him and walked into Allison's room. She looked like a person who has been awake in rooms like this before. "I bought a stone," she said, before I asked, "not to bury him, to show him he could die." "Men like him don't read poems," I said. "No," she said, so I spoke his language, logistics. "Where were you at 1 a.m.? "In bed, with my daughter asleep down the hall. I dreamed I was standing at the overpass. In the dream, I could hear Springsteen." Rourke's Instagram echo. We found the dash cam in the gray Mazda under the deadlight. CSU pulled the card. We watched on a lab monitor that smelled like dust and old pizza. The video hurt. The video always hurts. Carver stepped into frame at 12:57 a.m., coat neat, hair neat, a smile for a camera that wasn't his. He spread his hands. He looked like a politician practicing. A second figure, shorter, shoulders square, stepped into frame. The camera cut on a motion sensor, so we lost the first 10 seconds. We saw enough. We saw a hand raise, a flash, Carver jerk, then fold, one hand reaching toward gravel like he could pick it up and put it back. The shooter wore black, a cap low, gloves. They didn't turn back to the camera. They didn't speak. They walked like they were keeping their bones inside. Height, gait, frame, could have been Wren, could have been Allison, could have been 100 women in dark clothes at midnight who wanted a story to end. Torres said, "Her ear." We rewound, froze. The shooter's ear, left, had a small crescent missing at the top, the kind of notch you get from a childhood dog or a bad piercing. We checked Allison, ears neat. We checked Wren, left ear, top, a crescent you'd miss unless you were looking. Wren didn't cry when we told her. She laughed once, a sound like a bark. "He told me to meet him. He told me he'd sign the parachute and never touch me again. He told me I owed him a thank you. He told me to come alone." "You brought a gun," I said. "I brought an end," she said. "The gun came when I saw he'd set up a movie." "You shot him?" "I shot him because he was going to do it to someone else, and because he wanted to do it to me on film." She'd rehearsed the line. That doesn't mean it wasn't true. If justice is a scale, what do you put on the other side of a man's weight when the law offers you nothing but your own hand? We charged Wren with second-degree murder because the law likes numbers as much as it likes words. The DA wanted first, the video wanted second. Rourke got tampering with evidence and accessory after. Hart got obstruction and a revoked license. Tully got nothing yet, but we put him on a shelf with a label. Shelves like that have a way of tipping later. At her arraignment, Wren wore gray and looked like a person who has learned to keep her face where she can find it. Allison sat in the back row with June between her and a man I recognized from every event where the wealthy pretend it's normal to see each other. June looked at her shoes. Her ponytail had a pink elastic. Reporters practiced sympathy on camera and then asked for sound bites about monsters and heroes. I said, "We follow facts," and Torres said, "We hold people accountable." And the city ate it like it eats everything, fast, loud, then bored. Back at the Siesta Motor Lodge, I turned the vacancy sign off with my hand because the manager likes me and because he was sweeping and because it felt like a magic trick I could still do. The room smelled like lemon and dust. I sat on the bed and listened to the swamp cooler knock twice and then stop. That meant the belt would hold until Tuesday. Naomi texted, "You okay?" We hadn't spoken in a week. I typed, "Mostly." She sent a thumbs up and a photo of the dog asleep upside down like a question. I smiled, the kind that doesn't need teeth. Allison emailed a single sentence. "He doesn't get to be the whole story." I didn't reply. I don't know how to write back to a woman who wanted a headstone as a warning and got a memory instead. I printed a photo of the underpass and wrote the case number on the back in my neat block letters. I pinned it to the corkboard in my head, where I keep things I don't want to forget. Then I slept like someone who had carried a stone to the edge and let it fall. Resolution doesn't taste like victory. It tastes like water after you've been thirsty for too long. Bland until you realize you're alive.
I've been a cop long enough to know that stories don't end. They pause, because the city needs the stage. The best I can do is make the pauses honest. A dead man's phone called me to confess. In the end, it wasn't his mouth. It was the machinery he built to keep himself from being bothered. A woman used that machinery to send me a map. Another woman used a gun to redraw the border she'd been living inside. A man who sells logistics watched and told himself he was a witness instead of a cause. I keep thinking about the line I wrote on my palm that night in the motel. Who? The answer is always smaller and bigger than the room. It's names, and it's weather. It's a boot print, and it's a decade. Naomi used to say I loved the moment before I knew more than I loved her. She wasn't wrong. Tonight, I loved the moment after. The quiet when the phone stops buzzing and the city breathes, and you sit in a room that smells like lemon and old air, and understand that your job isn't to fix the world. It's to make one corner of a bridge safer to walk under. I don't know if that's noble. I know it's mine.
When the dead call me now, I listen for wind and flags and the echo of someone else's plan. And I answer with my own name, just to remember who's on the line.